The San Bernardino Line was actually announced long before Train Sim World 5, so I initially wasn't expecting to see it pushed back and released as a base route in the new, and quite unnecessary, sequel. Regardless, it's time to take a look at this thing and see if it's any better than Dovetail's previous Metrolink route, that being the Antelope Valley Line. The line from Los Angeles to San Bernardino is 57.6 miles, or 92.7 kilometers long, and it features 17 stations. Disappointingly, the Arrow line from San Bernardino downtown to Redlands University is not included in the TSW add-on. That would have been a good opportunity to include the unique Stadler Flirt DMUs, and recreate them in a way that could have owned Rivets Flirt in S-Bahn Zentralschweiz. As for the rolling stock that's actually included in this add-on, you get the EMD F125 and MPI MP36PH-3C diesel locomotives, along with the Hyundai Rotem and Bombardier bi-level coaches, all in Metrolink colours, of course. The F125 and Rotem coaches are reused from the Antelope Valley Line DLC, while the MP36 and bi-levels are modified from the Caltrain variants that we already had in the game as an add-on for the San Francisco to San Jose route. Considering the fact that Metrolink still has a small number of EMD F125PH locomotives in service, their absence in TSW is rather annoying. Now shifting focus to the passenger coaches, where we see that the bi-levels are supplied in two liveries, and they will appear in mixed consists with the Hyundai Rotem coaches. This is a welcome change from the Antelope Valley Line, whose trains only had the newer stock. The Hyundai Rotem cab cars can stand up to collisions much better than the older stock, and indeed, bi-level cab cars are not allowed to lead Metrolink trains anymore, and their trains always have a Hyundai Rotem coach behind the locomotive and a Rotem cab car at the other end. I'm not sure which specific bi-level variant this is meant to depict, but anyone who's more knowledgeable on Metrolink is welcome to explain in the comments. And before I forget, here's a side-by-side comparison of the Caltrain and Metrolink variants for the MP36PH-3C. At some point, I hope to see another member of the MP Express family brought to TSW, preferably the Sunrail MP32PH-Q or Sounder MP40PH-3C. And yes, I am aware of the fact that those companies would only appear in TSW if a licensing deal could be arranged. No need to remind me in the comments. As for the sounds, I initially thought that they would all be reused from the existing Caltrain variant. After all, Dovetail are notorious for lazily reusing sounds many times in the past. I could have sworn I read, in one of the pre-release articles for TSW 5, that Metrolink ran a special train just so DTG staffers could record sounds from the MP36PH-3C. I don't hear about that sort of thing happening too often where add-on development for TSW is concerned. Here's a comparison between the Caltrain and Metrolink MP36 horns, then a departure demonstration with the Metrolink variant. I can't verify the accuracy of the Metrolink engine's sounds myself, but I don't think they're horrible. The San Bernardino Line's timetable is a little busier than what the Antelope Valley Line has in TSW. The real AVL got a busier schedule from October 2023 onwards. In real life, the weekday schedule has 18 trains a day in each direction, including the extra peak time express to and from Redlands downtown, and none of these trains terminate short of San Bernardino. The schedule is geared more towards commuters travelling into Los Angeles in the morning and back home in the afternoon, with a less frequent service in the off-peak. On the weekends, there are only 8 passenger trains a day in each direction over this line. If you own the Cajon Pass add-on as well, then the BNSF locomotives and freight wagons from that route will layer onto the San Bernardino line too, but I don't bother running any of those freight services myself because that sort of thing doesn't really interest me. Most of the timetable mode services are split into 2 parts, apparently to allow for shorter gameplay sessions, but this results in the number of playable services being artificially increased for the Metrolink stock, and anyone would think that Dovetail forgot about the fact that players could just use the normal save function. It takes the better part of 2 hours, more specifically around 1 hour and 50 minutes, to complete a full-length run from Los Angeles to San Bernardino, or vice versa, if you stop at all stations except the Speedway. That journey time is only a little bit shorter than what you get on the Antelope Valley Line, and I can't imagine that many people will have the patience to run a service as long as this, especially in one sitting. On a more positive side, I'm generally impressed by the station modelling, with most stations on this route looking very accurate to their real-life counterparts. As for what could be my favourite station on this line, my money's on Claremont, Upland, or Rialto. One of the big selling points for this route was the section where the track runs through the middle of a highway between Cal State LA and El Monte stations. And while this is somewhat cool, the immersion is spoiled by the cars sometimes not appearing at all, or visibly floating above the road surface. Floating cars can also be seen just beyond the South G Street crossing at San Bernardino downtown. I recall seeing this bug on at least one previous route, namely the extended Long Island Railroad, and I'm not at all surprised to see that it still hasn't been fixed for the San Bernardino line. This doesn't test games after all. Meanwhile, and for some reason, the cars actually sink into the road surface as they go through the crossing just west of Upland Station. On my end at least, and even after I put -DX12 in the launch options, this route's performance was inconsistent, with the frame rates averaging between 60 and 100 FPS for most of the route, but it could plummet to around 35 FPS at Los Angeles Union Station and in the San Bernardino area. I reckon this is due to either the game's poor optimization, the more built-up scenery at both ends of the line, or more trains present in the busier stations and yards. I often see the camera freezing or stuttering when I try moving it around right after spawning at a station on foot, and I got the stuttering again as I moved the external camera around while driving the MP36. As someone who, especially when it comes to the American rail scene, prefers commuter trains over their freight services, I was initially interested in the San Bernardino line coming to TSW. This route does have some good things going for it, namely a busier timetable and a little bit more rolling stock variety than the Antelope Valley Line, not to mention the well-detailed stations. But the line's boring nature and the lack of any locomotive or rolling stock types that are actually new to TSW, not to mention the inconsistent performance, are what really let this DLC down for me, and the decision to make yet another California route comes across as a massive cop-out on Dovetail's part. I didn't think the San Bernardino line would have had all that broad of an appeal, which begs the question as to why the silly sods from Chatham decided to bring it to TSW. As I said in a previous video, Train Sim World 5 is the third TSW iteration in a row to feature the state of California in the base US route. The United States of America has so much potential for great TSW routes, and it's disappointing to see Dovetail not taking advantage of that potential, regardless of whatever reasoning they may have for doing 3 California routes in a row. Fortunately, that mould will be broken soon with the MBTA Framingham and Worcester line. I'm looking forward to this route, but trying to remain cautiously optimistic at the same time. In any case, there should be a US-based third-party developer for TSW that isn't High Iron Simulations.